How you doing? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're starting Daf 5 of Masechta Horayos, friends. Okay, on Daf 5 of Masechta Horayos, we start with a new Mishnah, and that's really going to be the topic of today's Daf, which is who actually offers the Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor and when. Right, we've been discussing this Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor. Bezdin Sanhedrin makes a mistake, and then they have to offer this cow. I think it's come up already, at least in principle. Who's the one actually offering this cow? Is it Sanhedrin? Is it Am Yisrael? Right? Who's actually offering this Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor? You see, well, that's really going to be the discussion for this whole daf. Lots of different angles and kind of riffing on that question of who offers the Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor and in what context. That is really the topic of today's daf. So there aren't really multiple kind of sections in today's daf. It's really that topic, and we're just going to be like hitting it from all sides. So without further ado, let's go back to. Okay, we are going to begin on daf Dalid Omid Beis at the Mishnah, 2 lines from the bottom. Says the Mishnah, Horu Bezdin va'asu kolakal all ruban al pien. Mevin par uvavadas kol mevin par besar de Rameir. All right, so this is the opinion of Rameir. We see that I'd say primarily machlokas Rameir, Reb Shimon, and Rabbi Yehuda, but there was also going to be the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. There's going to be a lot of opinions. It's going to be a bunch of opinions, but the primary ones, maybe you could say, is Reb Meir, Reb Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda. So this is Reb Meir. So again, Horu Bezdin ruled. They said a particular type of chaylev is mutter. Okay. V'asu kol hakol. Bezdin ruled this particular type of chaylev is mutter. So everybody went and ate it. All the Yidden ate the chaylev that they thought Bezdin had ruled had mistakenly ruled as mutter. Or Ruban, or majority of Am Yisrael. Al-Pien, based on Sanhedrin. Mevin, par, there's a Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor. Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor. And who offers it? The Sanhedrin. Mevin, the Sanhedrin offers a Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor. Uvavodas kochavim, if the mistaken ruling was with regards to Avodah Zarah, let's say that you're allowed to bow down to Markulis, let's say. Mevin par v'so'ir. They bring a cow and a goat. I believe the cow is an ola and the goat, I believe, is a chatos. Div Reb Meir. That's Reb Meir's opinion. So there's two notable items. There's two notable things in Reb Meir's opinion. One is that it is the Bezdins, the Sanhedrin, who's offering the Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor. And two, in order for there to be a Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor, it has to be the majority of Am Yisrael. We can see different shitas, and maybe it could be a shevet or a majority of a shevet. It says Meir, it has to be a majority of Am Yisrael, and then Bezdin, the Sanhedrin, offers a Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda, Yud Beis Shvatim, Mevin Yud Beis Parim. So Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, however, is that if all of Am Yisrael goes and eats chaylev now, because Sanhedrin said it's okay, this particular type of chaylev, so it says Rabbi Yehuda, each and every shevet in Am Yisrael is going to bring their own Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor v'avodas kochavim, and when it comes to Avodah Zarah, right, if the Psak of Bezdin was with regard to Avodah Zarah, well then the offering for that, when Bezdin rules for the tzibor regarding Avodah Zarah mistakenly, so it is a cow and a goat, as we mentioned a few minutes ago, but says Rabbi Yehuda times 12. By Avodah Zarah, Mevin Yud Beis Parim v'Shnei Masar Sirim. There will be 12 cows and 12 goats for the 12 tribes, respectively. So that's Reb Yehuda's opinion. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon Yud Gimel Parim. Reb Shimon has an interesting opinion, which is that it would be 13 cows Uvavadas Kochavim Shloisha Aser Parim V'Shloisha Aser Sirim. Says Reb Shimon that if it was, let's say, with regard to Chalev, so there would be 13 cows. If it was by Avodah Zarah, there would be 13 cows and 13 goats. Parvisar l'chol shevet v'shevet. Parvisar lebezdin. A cow and a goat for each and every tribe, as well as a cow and a goat for Bezdin. Excuse me. Oh, sheesh. I guess the cough is not gone yet. It's nighttime. What time is it? It's 8 p.m. So yeah, at night it gets worse, but this is when I was ready to record. Anyways, so Reb Shimon has an interesting shita, which is that, so he says, I wouldn't want to say that he says like Rabbi Yehuda, because there are several distinctions between Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Shimon, but so we had Reb Meir who says that it's the Sanhedrin who offers the Parliament of Shel Tzibur. We had Rabbi Yehuda who says it's the tribes that offer the Parliament of Shel Tzibur. Reb Shimon says it's the tribes, but also the Sanhedrin. So therefore Reb Shimon says that if they ruled, let's say, with regard to Chalev, so each of the tribes would offer a Parliament of Shel Tzibur, and so would the Sanhedrin. If it was Avodah Zarah, each of the tribes would offer a Par V'Sayir, and so would the Sanhedrin. Okay, so again, Reb Shimon Omer Yud Gimel Parim V'Avodas Kochavim Shloisha Asar Parim V'Shloisha Asar Sirim Par V'Sayir L'Chol Shevet V'Shevet Par V'Sayir L'Bezdin. Now, more scenarios. As I said, today's whole daf is essentially going to be focused on who offers the Parliament of Shel Tzibur and when. We're going to have all sorts of different scenarios. So here's another scenario. Haru Bezdin v'asu zayin shvatim oruban al pien. So what if Bezdin rules that, let's say, a type of chalev is mutter, and then 7, of course there are 12 tribes, 6 would be 50-50, 7 is already a majority. So now 7 tribes eat the chalev based on the psak of the Sanhedrin, or even a majority of 7 tribes, okay? Mevin par, so then there would be a Parliament of Shel Tzibur of Avodas Kochavim Mevin par v'Sayir, and if the psak was not chalev but with regard to Avodah Zarah, so then there would be a par v'Sayir. Divrei Meir, that's Reb Meir's opinion, right? That again, Reb Meir's opinion is that it's the Sanhedrin that offers the Parliament of Shel Tzibur. So if a majority of Am Yisrael, let's say 8 the chalev, 7 tribes, so then the Sanhedrin would offer a par, and if it was Avodah Zarah, they would offer a par v'Sayir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, says Rabbi Yehuda, Zayin Shvatim Shechotu Mevin Zayin Parim. Says Rabbi Yehuda, if 7 tribes sin, then there will be 7 Parliament of Shel Tzibur, because each of the 7 tribes will bring their own Parliament of Shel Tzibur. Now this is where things get very interesting. Listen to this. And continues Rabbi Yehuda, Ushar Shvatin Shelo Chatu, and the remaining 5 tribes that didn't eat the chalev, Mevin Ayidei and Par Shap Elu Shelo Chatu Mevin Ayidei Chotin. You hear that, friends? Says Rabbi Yehuda, and it's not only the 7 tribes that ate the chalev that will be bringing Parliament of Shel Tzibur, not only the 7 tribes, but even the 5 tribes that didn't eat the chalev will also be bringing Parliament of Shel Tzibur. Again, Vishar, I'm reading that again, Vishar Shvatim Shelo Chatu, and even the remaining 5 tribes that didn't sin, they also mevin al yedein, by way of the 7 that did sin, the 5 that didn't sin also will be bringing a Parliament of Shel Tzibur. Sha'ap elu shelo chatu mevin al yedei choten. Even the tribes that didn't sin bring a Parliament of Shel Tzibur by extension from the 7 that did sin. Wow. Reb Shimon Amar Ches Parim. Whereas Reb Shimon says, in this case, there wouldn't be 12, but there would be 8. 7 for the 7 that sin, for the 7 tribes that sin, and then an eighth for Bezdin. Bezdin would also bring a parim davar shel tzibur. And if we're talking about avodah zarah, so then there will be 8 cows and 8 goats for the 7 tribes plus Sanhedrin. Okay, a cow and a goat for each shevet as well as for Bezdin. Horu Bezdin shel echad min hashvatim. Okay, now what if the Bezdin for a particular shevet? So we're not talking about the Sanhedrin right now. We're talking about the Bezdin for a particular shevet ruled that a particular type of chelev is mutter, and that shevet then went and ate the chelev. Also a shevet apin, and that shevet now ate the chelev that their Bezdin said was okay. Also shevet hu chayav, so that shevet is going to be chayav to bring a parim davar shel tzibur. Ushar kol shvatim piturim divrei Yehuda, but all of the other shevets would be potter. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda says that if the Bezdin of a particular shevet ruled that, say, a type of chelev is mutter, and then that shevet eats that chelev, so that shevet will bring a parim davar shel tzibur, but that's it. None of the other shvatim. Remember, Rabbi Yehuda had said earlier that if 7 of the shvatim eat the chelev, so then they bring the par, but also the remaining 5 shvatim. But if we're talking about one shevet that ate chelev based on the fact that their own Bezdin, not the Sanhedrin, but their own Bezdin ruled that that particular chelev is okay, so only that shevet would bring a parim davar shel tzibur. But the Chacham say, Ein chayavin ela al Horayos Bezdin agadol bavad. Whereas the Chacham disagree and say no. If the Bezdin of a particular shevet rules that a particular chelev is mutter, that's not going to be shaykh for parim davar shel tzibur. Parim davar shel tzibur is specifically a halacha that with regard to the Sanhedrin hagadol bilvad. Shenemar ve'im kol adas Yisrael yishgu v'lo adas also shevet. That if the Sanhedrin of all of Israel makes a mistake, but not just the Bezdin for that particular shevet, argue the rabbis. Tanu Rabbanon Yadu shehoru v'tou mahoru yachu yu chayovin tamlomar v'noda achatos v'lo sheyivadu achotin shish. Chaveh, look at them what this means. So it means shish. So Sanhedrin ruled, but they forgot what they ruled about. They couldn't remember. Did they rule that a particular type of chelev was mutter? Or maybe the ruling was with regard to dam. Now both chelev and dam, I guess, have a chiyuv cars. I guess, right? Kikol, does it say that, what? Does the Torah say that kikol ochel dam? Did I just make that up? I don't know, but I guess dam is also a chiyuv chatas. So they issued a ruling. So Bezdin issued a ruling, but Sanhedrin issued a ruling, but they couldn't remember what the ruling was about. Was it about chelev, or was it about dam? And now the Am Yisrael went and they ate both chelev and dam. So now, either way, in principle, like, you can argue that they have to bring a parim davar shel tzibur, because, like, regardless of if their ruling was in fact by dam or by chelev, Am Yisrael ate both of those things. So, like, certainly there's going to be a parim davar shel tzibur, right? So let's see. So what do we say? So Tanu Rabbanan and the Rabbi said, Yadu Shaharu. So the Sanhedrin knew that they made an incorrect ruling, but they couldn't remember V'lo Yadu V'tou Maharu, but they couldn't remember what their ruling was about. Was it about chelev? Was it about dam? They couldn't remember. Yachu yu chayovin. Is it possible there will be a parim davar shel tzibur in that case? Right? Am Yisrael then went and they ate chelev, dam. So regardless of if their ruling was about chelev or dam, Am Yisrael ate both of those things. So maybe they should be chayiv to bring a parlim davar shel tzibur, even though they don't remember what their ruling was for. But whichever it was violated. Talmud Omer vinoda achatos, that the sin must be known. V'lo sheyivadu achotin. It's not enough just to know that a sin took place, that Am Yisrael did whatever mistaken ruling, right, acted upon whatever mistaken ruling there was, but they don't know what it was. It's not enough to know that like the violation occurred. You have to actually know what the violation was, what their ruling was about. And therefore, the answer is no. They would not be chayiv to bring a parlim davar shel tzibur. Asher chatu shnei shvatim mevin shnei parim. Okay. Now, if 2 tribes sin, well then there will be 2 parlim davar shel tziburs. Chevra, whose opinion is this? Well, I'll tell you, it's not the opinion of Reb Meir, because Reb Meir would say, first of all, it has to be the majority of Am Yisrael. 2 shvatim is not the majority of Am Yisrael. Secondly, Reb Meir would say that it's the Sanhedrin that's bringing the parlim davar shel tzibur. So even if there were a parlim davar shel tzibur, there would be only 1. We're saying 2. It also can't be Reb Shimon, because Reb Shimon would say if 2 shvatim, well, we don't know exactly what Reb Shimon would say by 2 shvatim, but I could tell you that by 7 shvatim, he would say 7 plus Sanhedrin. So this must be the opinion of Reb Yehuda. Reb Yehuda said that if 7 shvatim sin, that if 7 shvatim, let's say, eat the chelev, so then, although this is talking interesting actually, because we're saying, right, what about the rest of the shvatim? So, okay, this is anyways, shnei shvatim, bevin shnei parim. So it's talking interesting. Whose opinion? I mean, I think this is going to be Reb Yehuda's opinion, but it's interesting though, because maybe it was the bezdins of those particular shvatim. I don't know. Or maybe he's just not talking about the other shvatim now. But anyways, okay. Chatu shnei shvatim, 2 shvatim ate chelev, let's say, based on the ruling of bezdin. Mevin shnei parim, so they bring 2 parlim davar shel tzibur. Chatu shlosh, mevin shlosh. If 3 tribes sin, so they bring 3 parlim davar shel tzibur. O eino omer elo chatu shnei yechidim, mevin shnei parim, chatu gimel, mevin gimel. Wait, but how do you know this is talking about shvatim? Maybe it's talking about individuals. Interesting. Because if individuals sin based on the ruling of Bezin, they would bring cows. Tamlamar akol chayv. So it says akol. No, it's the congregation that is chayv, not individuals. Okay, fine. So it's the congregation, not individuals. V'chol kol v'kol chayv, and each and every congregation is chayiv. Ketzad, how so? Chatu shnei shvatim mevin shnei parim. So if 2 shevets eat the chelev, so then there will be 2 parlim davar shel tziburs. Chatu zayin. If 7 shevets sin mevin zayin, then they offer 7. Right? If 7 tribes sin, then 7 parlim davar shel tziburs. Ushar shvatim shelo chatu, and the other tribes that didn't eat the chelev, mevin ayedayin par. Even the other shvatim that didn't sin, so if 7 shvatim were saying ate the chelev, but the 5 didn't, they would still bring parlim davar shel tziburs as a result of the actions of the other 7. Sha'afilu elu shelo chatu mevin ayedei achotin, that even those tribes that didn't eat the chelev still bring parlim davar shel tzibur on account of those who did eat the chelev. L'chach nemar kol l'chayv kol kol v'kol divrei Yehuda, and this is why it says kol in the pasuk, to say that each and every kol, each and every congregation, each and every shevet would be chayiv. Divrei Yehuda, that's Reb Yehuda's opinion. Reb Shimon Omer, zayin shvatim shechatim mevin zayin parim. Reb Shimon, of course, says that the 7 tribes that sinned will bring 7 parlim davar shel tziburs respectively. Uvezdin mevin hayedayin par, and then additionally, Bezdin, the Sanhedrin, also offers a parlim davar shel tzibur for a whopping total of 8. Shenemar lemata kol v'nemar lemala kol, because it says in 2 consecutive psukim by Paralim Davar Shel Tzibur, it says, right, kohol in each one. I'll read you the 2 psukim right now. First one is, V'im kol adas Yisrael yishgu v'nelam davar m'enei ha-kohol, basu achas m'kol b'tzis Hashem yisrael se'esenav ha'shemu. And then the very next pasuk is, v'noda achadis jechatu aleh v'ekrivu ha-kohol, parvim bakar, etc. So it says kohol in both psukim. Ma'kol la'omer l'mala, just like the call that is said above by the ruling, Bezdin imakol, right? Bezdin rules that, let's say, a type of chelev is mutar, and then the kohol acts upon that ruling. So avkol omer lamata. So often when it comes to the sacrifice itself, to the offering itself, when it says kohol there, it's bezdin imakol. It is bezdin along with the congregation, and therefore says Reb Shimon in the case where 7 tribes ate the chelev, so the 7 tribes plus the Sanhedrin will bring Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur for a total of 8 Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur. In that case, Reb Meir Omer says, Reb Meir, Zayin Shvatim Shechatu, that if 7 tribes ate the chelev, so that's a majority of Am Yisrael, Bezdin Mevin Aidein Par. Bezdin brings a Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur. That's, of course, Reb Meir's opinion, that it's Bezdin who offers Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur, not the congregation, not the Shvatim. Vehein Petur. And the tzibur, the shvatim, do not have to bring a Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur. The Sanhedrin offers it. Nemar kol lemato, nemar kol lemala. It's his call in both of those psukim that we read earlier by Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur. Ma kol omer lemaylo bezin velo tzibur. So just like when it says call above by the errant ruling, so that ruling, the errant ruling was made by the Sanhedrin. So Avkol Amr Lamata, also when it says call by the offering, Bezdin V'lo Tzibor, it is Bezdin who will offer that offering alone. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Omer Mishmal, says Reb Shimon ben Elazar in Reb Meir's name, that not only when it's an absolute majority of Am Yisrael, but even Chatu Shisha Shvatim Ve'emru Bo Shakol, even if it's only 6 tribes, not 7, 6 tribes, but if you count up how many people are in those 6 tribes, it would actually be the majority of Am Yisrael. Oh, alternatively, Zion, even if it's 7 tribes, Avubisha Eno Rubo Shakol, right? You could have 7 tribes, but 7, let's say, smaller tribes, that all of the population of those 7 tribes together are not the rov of Am Yisrael, Mevi and Par, still there would be a Par Elam Davar Shel Tzibur. So Reb Shimon ben Elazar says that when determining the majority for the Par Elam Davar Shel Tzibur, it could even be 6 tribes, but they are the majority in absolute terms of Am Yisrael, or they could be 7 tribes, even though they're actually not the majority of Am Yisrael. Either way, Bezdin would offer a Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur according to Reb Shimon ben according to Reb Shimon ben Elazar, who is saying that in the name of Reb Meir. Omar Mar, we said earlier, V'noda achatos v'lo she'yivadu achotin. We had said earlier that Bezdin needs to know what their ruling was about. It's not enough to know that the ruling was violated. For example, right, we said that if they can't remember, was the ruling about chelev, was it about dam? Well, Am Yisrael had eaten both chelev and dam. So, memela, they should be chayiv a korban, right? They say, no, it's important that they know what the actual ruling was about before they bring a Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur. Mantana, who is the Tana who says that? Omer Yehuda Omer Rav, V'itema Rava, Dilo, Rabbi Eliezer. Well, I'll tell you who it's not. It's not Rabbi Eliezer. It's not that we're learning the Mishnah in Krasis. Omer Rabbi Eliezer says, Rabbi Eliezer, Monafshach, Im Chelev Ochol, Chayiv, Noser, Ochol, Chayiv. If a person is not sure if he ate Chelev or Noser, either way, not great, right? Either way, he's chayiv a korban chatas, whether it's chelev, whether, right. So he's not, right, so he accidentally ate some fat. It was not shuman, I'll tell you that much. Now, was it chelev? Was it noser? He's not sure. So, or I guess he doesn't know what he ate, whether it's meat, fat, I don't know. He ate something, he doesn't know whether it was nos or whether it was chaylev. Either way, he's chayiv a korban chatas. But says, where am I? So Rabbi Eliezer says, look, manav shachmalcho chaylev im chaylev alcho chayl, nos or alcho chayl. So Rabbi Eliezer says, it's a machlokas. Rashi points out, it's a machlokas Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. I think that we actually even have seen this before. But Rabbi Eliezer says that, of course it means a korban chatas. Okay, so it doesn't know if he ate nos or if he ate chaylev. But who cares? Whatever he did eat, he's going to have to bring a korban chatas for it. So just bring a korban chatas. So according to Rabbi Eliezer, it's not important to know exactly what you're bringing the korban for. What is important to know is that you have to bring it. So therefore, we want to say that Rabbi Eliezer would say the same thing here, that if Bezdin knows that regardless of what the ruling was, Am Yisrael violated it. So we want to say that Rabbi Eliezer would say that the Sanhedrin should bring a par, Helam Dover Shel Zibur, but here we're saying that they don't. So it must be that this brisa is not like Rabbi Eliezer. Rav Ashi Omer says, Rav Ashi, Afilu Tema, Rabbi Eliezer, you can even say that actually this brisa could be, Rabbi Eliezer could be the author of this brisa. Shiny Acha, and over here by Parlan Dover Shel Zibur, he requires that the Sanhedrin know what ruling of theirs was violated. Because by Parlan Dover Shel Zibur, it says that it must be known. It's known the sin, right? That they sinned upon it. It specifically, they have to know exactly what it was. So therefore, even Rabbi Eliezer would say here that Bezdin needs to know exactly what their ruling was. But one second. By where is this from? I don't know what this pasuk is. Wait, where am I? What would that be? I'd have to look that up. Okay, but in that case, also, maybe it's by Chalev. I don't know, I have to look it up. But I'll look it up now in a second. But there also it says Shechot Haba, and yet Rabbi Eliezer doesn't require you to know exactly what it was. So Aumi Boile Pradla Misasek. Well, there Ba is coming to say to the exclusion of Misasek, somebody who inadvertently does an Aver, meaning he's like holding a knife and he picks up the knife and cuts down something on Shabbos by accident. So in that case, there would be no korban chata. So Ba there is to exclude Misasek. But over here, Ashechatu Aleh, we could say, is to say that Bezdin would have to know exactly what their ruling was in order to be chayiv a palandav shatzibur, and even Rabbi Eliezer would agree with that. Okay, so it looks like that pasuk of Asher Chata Ba is in the context of a Sa'ir Nasi, which we're going to learn plenty about. But yeah, I guess the point is that it could be that we just applied that, right? It's a korban chatas of a Nasi Batson. So it could be that we just apply that generally to korban chatas. My time with Rabbi Yehuda. What's pshat with Rabbi Yehuda? How come Rabbi Yehuda has a bunch of interesting positions, and we're going to go into them right now. We've seen them, not all of them, I don't think, but we've seen some of them. What is the reason for Rabbi Yehuda's opinion? Kasavar Arba Kahal Sive. Says Rabbi Yehuda, he learns out 4 kahals. Basically, we had mentioned earlier, what did we say? Right, makol, exactly. We had said earlier that it says kahal in the first pasuk as well as in the second pasuk, right? If we look at the 2 pasukim, the first pasuk says, I'm reading the pasukim, V'imkol adas Yisrael yishgu v'ne'elam dover me'enei ha-kahal. That's in the first pasuk. The next pasuk says, V'nod ha'achad shechotu aleh v'kivu ha-kahal. So it says in both pasukim, ha-kahal. Now, Rabbi Yehuda darshans that it could have just said kahal in both pasukim, but it says ha-kahal. So we learn now something from kahal as well as the extra hey in both pasukim, so that gives us 4 things to make drushes from. So again, my time with Rabbi Yehuda, what's pshat with Rabbi Yehuda? Ksaver arba kahal leksive. Rabbi Yehuda says, well, it says kahal 4 times by Parlam Davar Shel Tzibur. Kahal, hakal, kahal, hakal. You have the 2 psukim where it says hakal, so we darshan each one kahal, hakahal in both places. Could have just said kahal, but it says hakal. Chad. So one of the 4 is l'chayiv al kol kol v'kol. One is to say that you're chayiv for each and every kahal, right? So we talked about if, let's say, 7 tribes, 8 chaylev, so then each of those 7 plus the remaining 5 actually will, although we didn't actually get there yet. So let's talk about the 7, right? So if, let's say, 7 tribes, 8 chaylev, so the 7 tribes will bring a parlam davar shel tzibur. V'chad, and another call teaches le'ora tluya bebezdin u'maiseh tluya bekahal. Okay, that bezdin, that the Sanhedrin makes the mistaken ruling, and it's Am Yisrael that then acts upon that ruling. So the bezdin makes the ora, and Am Yisrael does the actions. V'chad, and number 3, call number 3 is ligrira. That is to say that, so in the scenario where 7 tribes, 8 chaylev, so then those 7 tribes bring a parlam davar shel tzibur, and then we said not only that, but greira, right, to be schlepped along. The remaining 5 tribes also bring a parlam davar shel tzibur. Okay, that's been the 3rd call. And halacha number 4, which is learned out from the 4th call, is v'chad l'shevet she'asa be'oras bezdino. And finally, Rabbi Yehuda's shita of that a shevet that eats chaylev based on the psak of their own bezdin, they would also bring a parlam davar shel tzibur for that. So Rabbi Yehuda has 4 halachis that he learns out from the 4 kahals. He learns out that each individual shevet brings a parlam davar shel tzibur. Also that the remaining shvatim would bring parlam davar shel tzibur. Also that the Sanhedrin makes the inadvertent ruling, and the Am Yisrael is the one who acts upon it. And finally, that it could even be the bezdin of a particular shevet. Reb Shimon, it's also called like Sive, whereas Reb Shimon doesn't learn out 4 kahals, he learns out 3 kahals. Hakal, kahal, hakal. That the first hakal is darshan just as hakal. He doesn't say kahal, hakal for the first one. First one is just hakal. And in the second pasuk, there's kahal, hakal. There's 2 drushes in the second pasuk. So the first pasuk has 1 kahal. The second pasuk has 2 of them. Me'ene akal orche dekrahu, because Reb Shimon says that in the first pasuk, when it says from the eyes of the kahal, the hakahal is just a normal way of saying from the eyes of the kahal. It's like people say from the eyes of so-and-so, so this is the same thing. So nothing special. You're not going to learn 2 kahals from the first hakahal, just 1 from the first one. Okay, so you have 3. Kahal, and then kahal, right? So hakahal, and then kahal, hakahal, so that's 3, fine. So number 1, chad, l'chayib al kol kol v'kol. Okay. So firstly, Reb Shimon had said that each tribe is chayiv, right? Reb Shimon had said in the scenario where 7 tribes had eaten the chaylet, so then each of those 7 tribes will bring a parlam davar shel tzibur. V'trei achrine, and the other 2 kahals, nemer lemata kol, v'nemer lemala kol. He learns from that well, it says kahal in both psukim. Malaholin bezdin im akol. So just like in the first pasuk, where it says that bezdin makes a mistaken ruling, and then Am Yisrael acts upon that ruling. So Afkan, also in the second pasuk, where it talks about the korbanis, bezdin im hakol, bezdin will bring a parlam davar shel tzibur along with the congregation. Okay, givaldik. So Reb Shimon learns out that each shevet offers a parlam davar shel tzibur as well as bezdin. Reb Meir, And according to Reb Meir, who says that when it's a majority of Am Yisrael, then only the Bezdin brings the Palam Darish Tzibur. Kol HaKol, he only, Lo Darish, he doesn't learn out Kahol HaKahol. He doesn't say that Reb Meir doesn't learn that when it says HaKahol in both psukim, we can actually learn out 4 things. No, we can only learn out 2 things. One from the first HaKol and the second HaKol, and that is it. So Hilkach Trei Kahol Leiksive, it says Kahol twice. Miboile Lenemar Limato Kahol, Venemar Lemaila Kahol, and says Reb Meir, well, it says Kahol in the first pasuk as well as the second pasuk. Malahol and Bezdin Vilot Sibur, just like when it comes to the ruling of the Sanhedrin, it is the ruling of the Sanhedrin alone. Nothing to do, right? There's no involvement of the congregation. Right? That's how Reb Meir learns it. So Afkan Bezdin Vilot Sibur, so also by the offering itself, it is offered by Bezdin alone and not the congregation. Reb Shimon ben Elazar, and Reb Shimon ben Elazar, who had his old drasha about if it's 7 tribes but less than an absolute majority, or 6 tribes but yes a majority. My time, what's his pshat? Ksiv vaya im me'enei ha'eda. And if from the eyes of the congregation, this is actually by when Bezdin rules by Avodah Zarah, okay? It says, me'enei ha'eda, from the eyes of the congregation. Alma mi'uta, dichsiv me'enei. Right there. So me'enei ha'eda, even a miut, even a minority. Okay, uchsiv ki lechol am bishkaga. But it then says 2 psukim later that the entire nation is mistaken. The meme deruba in mutalo, which sounds like that's saying specifically a majority, not a minority. Okay, it said, how could this be? The first pasuk is saying even a minority. Second pasuk is saying it must be a majority. So asu vav v'hein rubo shalkol. Well, if 6, which is not a majority, but they are a majority of the population, Ozayin, or 7, which is the majority of the Shvatim, Avalpisha and Rubo Shakol, even if they aren't the majority of the actual population, Chayovin, in those cases, they will be Chayiv. So Shimon ben Elazar learns out from this sort of interplay between the minority and the majority to say that, well, even if you have, even if you don't have a majority of the tribes, but they are a majority of the people, or you do have a majority of the tribes, but they're not a majority of the people, still there would be a parlam davar shel tzibur. Reb Shimon v'Reb Meir doratzli bebezdin u'maisatzli bekol minalu. Now, so Reb Yehuda had learned out 4 kahals. One of the 4 was to teach that it's bezdin that makes the ruling, and it's the tzibur that does the doing. Reb Meir and Reb Shimon didn't have a kahal available to learn that, so then how do they know this detail? So Amar Abaye says Abaye Damakra, because the pasuk says V'haya ime'enei ha'eda nesisa lishgaga, that the pasuk says by when Bezdin rules by Avodah Zarah, it says V'haya ime'enei ha'eda nesisa lishgaga, that if the congregation did lishgaga based, so the drasha is that if the congregation acted based on the mistake, like an external mistake. What external mistake? The mistake of Bezdin. So we see that Am Yisrael is doing based on the mistaken ruling of Bezdin. So we see both the mistake of Bezdin and the action of Am Yisrael. Rava Amar says, Rava milechol ha'am bishgaga. Rava learns out from ki lekol ha'am bishgaga, the entire nation is involved in the mistake. Not just the people who did the mistake, but also the Sanhedrin who was responsible for the ruling. Vitzricha. And we need both psukim. Abayi's pasuk of V'haya im me'ena ha'eda neska l'shgaga, as well as Rava's pasuk of l'chol ha'am l'shgaga. We need both psukim. Because of Achmana V'haya im me'ena ha'eda neska l'shgaga, because if we only had the pasuk of, or Abayi's pasuk of im me'ena ha'eda neska l'shgaga, av amina afilu mi'uta, I might think that even if a minority of Am Yisrael ate the chaylev, there would be a part in Davar Shatzibur L'Achiksiv L'chol Ha'am B'Shgaga. That's why we have Rava's pasuk of the entire nation was making a mistake. This because of L'chol Ha'am B'Shgaga. And if we had the pasuk of L'chol Ha'am B'Shgaga V'Amino, at the Avdei Bezdin B'Adei Ruba, I might think that Bezdin would be required to also eat the chaylev together with everybody else. Therefore, we have a bias pasuk of if it's the people that make the mistake. Now the Gemara points out that these psukim that Abai and Rav are bringing, those are from when Bezdin inadvertently rules by permitting something related to Avodah Zarah. So how do we apply this to regular Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur? Well, it says both by Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur as well as by Avodah Zarah. When Bezdin makes a mistake by Avodah Zarah, it says me'ene in both cases, and therefore we can apply the rulings from Avodah Zarah to general Parlim Davar Shel Tzibur to say that Bezdin mistakes in the ruling and Am Yisrael is the one who does based on the ruling. So the Mishnah had said, Haru Bezdin shel echad v'chulet. The Mishnah had said that if the Bezdin of a particular shevet had ruled that, say, a particular type of chaylev is mutter, and then that shevet ate the chaylev based on their ruling, so Rabbi Yehuda had said that shevet will offer a parlim davar shel tzibur. Ibaru that's a kasha. Shevet echad, the Rabbi Yehuda, baraz Bezdin agadol. So we had just quoted from our Mishnah that if the Bezdin of a particular shevet rules for that shevet that a particular chaylev is mutter, and then they eat the chaylev. So we say that just right. I think the Mishnah is pretty specific. Also, shevet tu chayev v'shar kol shvatim p'turin. So when the shevet is acting based on the ruling of their particular Bezdin, so only that shevet would bring a parlim davar shel tzibur, none of the other shvatim. But what we want to know is what if one particular shevet ate chaylev, but not based on just their Bezdin, but based on the Sanhedrin Agadol. So the Sanhedrin had ruled that a particular type of chaylev is mutter, but only one of the shvatim acted on the ruling and actually ate the chaylev. So what would be the halacha there? Is it only that shevet that would bring a parlim davar shel tzibur? Or would all of the shvatim bring a parlim davar shel tzibur? Now, we had seen earlier, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that if 7 of the shvatim, at least 7 of the shvatim, if 7 of the shvatim had eaten chaylev, I'm just obviously using chaylev as an example of a type of psak that Bezdin could have given. So if 7 of the shvatim ate chaylev, so Rabbi Yehuda had said the remaining 5 will also bring parlim davar shel tzibur. We're asking now, what about if it was only one shevet? Would there other 11 shvatim bring parlim davar shel tzibur? So that's a kasha. Shevet echad, when we're talking about one shevet that ate chaylev, let's say, the Rabbi Yehuda be'oraz Bezdin agadol, based on the ruling of not just their own Bezdin of their shevet, but Bezdin agadol, Sanhedrin, mimaisu shar shvatim alo, would the other shvatim, with the remaining 11 shvatim, also bring parlim davar shel tzibur? Do we say shiva shvatim hu demaisi shar shvatim badayu? Do we say that what we saw, that when it comes to 7 shvatim who ate chaylev, the remaining 5 will also bring parlim davar shel tzibur? Because 7 is a majority of the shvatim. Aval chad shevet, but when we're talking about only one shevet, the leka ruba, which of course is not a majority, low, so then the other shvatim would not offer parlim davar shel tzibur. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe if Sanhedrin rules that a particular type of chelev is mutter, and one shevet eats chelev based on that ruling, all the other 11 shvatim will also bring parlim davar shel tzibur. Tashma, come in here. So this is an interesting brisa. The brisa says, it's a short brisa. Tanakama says, Ma'in mevin par echad. Tanakama says, they bring one parlim davar shel tzibur. Reb Shimon omer shnei par. And Reb Shimon says that they bring 2 par helem davar shel tzibur. Interesting. So we have this little brisa. In this little brisa, the Tanakama is saying that one parlim davar shel tzibur is brought. Reb Shimon is saying 2 parlim davar shel tzibur are brought. We don't know who the Tanakama is. Who could it be? Who could the Tanakama be? Reb Meir? How could it be Reb Meir? Because if it's Reb Meir would say that Sanhedrin's only it's the Sanhedrin who brings a parlim davar shel tzibur, and only if it's the majority of Am Yisrael. If it's the majority of the Am Yisrael, then why would Reb Shimon be saying only 2 parlim davar shel tzibur? Because let's say it's 7 shvatim, Reb Shimon would say the 7 shvatim plus Bezdin, we would have 8. So who's the Tanakama? So again, Tashma, Ma'in Mevin, says Tanakama. What do they bring? Par echad, 1 parlim davar shel tzibur. Reb Shimon always says Reb Shimon, shnei par, 2 parlim davar shel tzibur. So what's this brisa talking about? Ilema shechatu shiva. If we're talking about where 7 shvatim 8 chelev, 7 shvatim 8 chelev. Okay, and the Tanakam is Reb Meir, he's saying that Sanhedrin brings a parlim davar shel tzibur, but then Reb Shimon Tmanya boy, Reb Shimon wouldn't say that there's only 2 parlim davar shel tzibur, so he would say 8, 7 for each of the 7 shvatim plus 1 for Bezdin. El d'chot shevet echad. Okay, fine. So we're talking about where 1 shevet sinned. Okay, and Reb Shimon is saying that shevet brings a parlim davar shel tzibur plus Bezdin. Okay, but ubemaida, what are we talking about though? Boraz Bezdino, if it's talking about where it's the Bezdin of that particular shevet that ruled, right? So Kilu, we're saying that we're talking about 1 shevet, right? 1 shevet 8 chelev. And if we're saying that it's based on the ruling of the Bezdin of their shevet, their own Bezdin ruled that way, but that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Reb Shimon would not say that there's parlim davar shel tzibur in that case. Reb Shimon leislet. Reb Shimon does not hold of the Bezdin of that particular shevet. Right? We said the Chachamim had said that it must be parlim davar shel tzibur is only for the Sanhedrin, not for the Bezdin of a particular shevet. So if we're talking about the Bezdin of a particular shevet, Reb Shimon would not be saying that there would be parlim davar shel tzibur. Elilab, whereas Bezdin agadol. Okay, so in order for Reb Shimon to be saying that there are parlim davar shel tzibur, it must be that we're talking about the psak of the Sanhedrin. Okay, the Tanakama money, and who's the Tanakama? In name of Reb Meir. If we're saying that it's Reb Meir, so where we are right now, we're saying it's the psak of the Sanhedrin, and 1 shevet 8 chelev based on that psak. Reb Shimon is saying there are 2 parlim davar shel tzibur, 1 for the shevet, 1 for the Sanhedrin. And now, who is the Tanakama? In him, Reb Meir, if we say it's Reb Meir, but Rubabai, Reb Meir does not say that there's a parlim davar shel tzibur for only 1 shevet. He requires a majority. So we want to say, who's the Tanakama who's saying that there's just 1 parlim davar shel tzibur when 1 shevet sins based on the psak of the Sanhedrin? Saying there's 1 parlim davar shel tzibur. It must be the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. So there's our answer. Rabbi Yehuda would say that 1 shevet based on the psak of Sanhedrin, only they would bring a parlim davar shel tzibur, nobody else. But says the Gemara, a very interesting answer, no. The Tanakama is not Rabbi Yehuda. You know what the Tanakama is? Amri Yochav ma'eskinan kagon shechotu shisha shvatim Vein Ruban shall call Reb Shimon ben Elazar he. The Gemara says, you know who the Tanakama is? Tanakam is Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Reb Shimon ben Elazar, my man. What did Reb Shimon ben Elazar say? Reb Shimon ben Elazar had said that there is, that Bezdin brings a Parlan Davar Shel Tzibur, even in a scenario where, right, so meaning Reb Shimon ben Elazar said Mishmo, and the name of Reb Meir, right, Reb Meir says that Bezdin is the one who brings the Parlan Davar Shel Tzibur, and ostensibly Reb Shimon ben Elazar is agreeing with that. It says Reb Shimon ben Elazar that Bezdin would bring a Parlan Davar Shel Tzibur even if we're talking about only 6 of the Shvatim, but they are a majority of Am Yisrael. Or if we're talking about 7 of the Shvatim, even if they're a minority of Am Yisrael, right? So 7 Shvatim, a majority of the tribes, even if they're a minority of absolute numbers of Am Yisrael, or 6 tribes, which are not a majority of the tribes, but they are a absolute majority of the population of Am Yisrael. So it says of Shimon Elazar, in that case, Bezdin would bring a Parlan Davar Shel Tzibur. So the Tanakama, who says that there's one Parlan Davar Shel Tzibur, is Reb Shimon ben Elazar. And we're talking about where there's 6 tribes that are a majority or 7 tribes that are a minority. And Reb Shimon, now get a hold of this. Why is Reb Shimon then saying that there's only 2 Parlan Davar Shel Tziburs? After all, Reb Shimon says that when 7 tribes ate the chelev, so there would be 8 Parlan Davar Shel Tziburs, kilu 7 for the 7 tribes and 1 for Bezdin. Why is he saying, oh, here, only 2? Because when Reb Shimon says that there's 7 Parlan Davar Shel Tziburs plus another one for Sanhedrin, that is when 7 tribes that are also a majority sin. If 7 tribes ate the Cheleb and they're also a majority of Am Yisrael, then there would be 7 Parlan Davar Shel Tziburs plus an 8th for the Sanhedrin. But in this case, we're talking about 7 tribes that are a minority of Am Yisrael, or 6 tribes that are a majority, but there's only 6 tribes. In that case, Reb Shimon would say that there would be 1 par for Sanhedrin, but then only 1 par for Am Yisrael. In that case, since there isn't a double majority. There isn't the majority of tribes and majority of people. There's only either a majority of tribes but a minority of people, or not a majority of tribes but a majority of the people. So in that case, that's why Reb Shimon's saying there's only 2 korbanos. Wow. So the Tanakam of that price is Taka Reb Shimon ben Elazar. It's not Reb Yehuda. We don't yet know what Reb Yehuda would say if just 1 Shevet ate the Chelev based on the ruling of the Sanhedrin. This is Gabaldi. Amazing. So 3 lines before it gets wide. Amri, they say, here what are we talking about? Kegon, Shechatu Shisha Shvatim Bein Ruben Chakol. Reb Shimon ben Elazar. The Tanakam of Reb Shimon ben Elazar, we're talking about where 6 Shvatim ate the Chelev, but they are a majority of Am Yisrael, or 7 Shvatim, but they're a minority of Am Yisrael. The Tanya that we learned about Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Omer says Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Bishma, the name of Reb Meir, Chatu Shisha, of 6 tribes, ate the Chelev. Vein Rubo Shakal, but they're a majority of Am Yisrael. O Shiva, or 7 tribes, which are a majority of the tribes, Af, Alpi Shein Rubo, She'ein on Rubo Shakal, even though they aren't the majority of Am Yisrael. Mevin, Par, Reb Shimon ben Elazar says that the Sanhedrin would bring a Parlan Davar Shel Tzibur, and he is the Tana Kama. Tashma, coming here, Reb Yehuda Omer. Oh, says Reb Yehuda. Here we go. Shevet she'also baraz beis dino, that a tribe that eats chelev based on the ruling of its own bezdin. Oh, so a shevet chayob. So that particular shevet brings the Parlan Davar Shel Tzibur. Ushar kol shvatim pturin, and all of the other shvatim do not bring Parlan Davar Shel Tziburs because because this shevet acted based on the ruling of their own bezdin. Uvaraz bezdin agadol. But if we're talking about the ruling of Sanhedrin, listen up, friends. Afilu shar shvatim chayavim shma mina. Says Rabbi Yehuda himself that if we're talking about the psak of the Sanhedrin, well, in that case, even if we're just talking about 1 shevet that ate the chelev, all other 11 shvatim would bring Parlan Davar Shel Tzibur as well. Afilu shar shvatim, even the other tribes, Chayavim would also have to bring Palim Davar Shel Tzibur. Shmamina, there you have it. The opinion of Rabbi Yehuda is that when one Shevet eats the Chelet based on the ruling of the Sanhedrin, all Shvatim bring Palim Davar Shel Tzibur. Amar Ashi, says Rav Ashi, Masnisa Nami Deiko, we could actually even infer this if we look closely at our own Mishnah. The Katani, it says in our Mishnah, also a Shevet al PM, that our Mishnah says that if a particular Shevet eats Chelet based on the psak of their own Bezdin, also a Shevet Chayab, that particular Shevet needs to bring a Palim Davar Shel Tzibur. Ushar kol Shvatim Pturin, and the other 11 Shvatim are exempt, do not need to bring Palim Davar Shel Tzibur. Lamali lemisna, why does our Mishnah have to say explicitly Ushar Shvatim Pturim, that when it comes to one Shevet eating Chelet based on the ruling of their own Bezdin, we say that Shevet brings the Palim Davar Shel Tzibur, and then the Mishnah, then it says explicitly, and the other Shvatim don't. Hatana also a Shevet Chayev. I mean, the Mishnah had already said that it's that particular Shevet that needs to bring the Palim Davar Shel Tzibur. V'chein the Tana also a Shevet Chayev, and since the Tana says that it's since the Mishnah says that it's that particular Shevet that needs to bring a Palim Davar Shel Tzibur, Memeile Yadayna Shar Shvatim Pturim. Well, Memeile, I know then that the other Shvatim don't need to bring a Palim Davar Shel Tzibur. Elo HaKamaj what when the Mishnah goes out of its way to say, and the other Shvatim don't bring a Palim Davar Shel Tzibur, what it's teaching us is the Ba'aras Bezdino Hu Deshar Shvatim Pturim, that it's the other Shvatim are Pturim from bringing a Palim Davar Shel Tzibur, because we're talking about where this particular Shevet ate Chelet based on the ruling of its own Bezdin Aval Ba'aras Bezdin Agadol, but the implication being that if it's based on the ruling of the Sanhedrin, then even the other Shvatim would also have to bring a Palim Davar Shel Tzibur, Shmamina. So there you have it. Rav Ashi says you can even arrive at this conclusion from the Mishnah itself, that when it comes to one Shevet eating Chelet based on the ruling of Sanhedrin, all Shvatim would have to bring a Palim Davar Shel Tzibur. Ibaru de'asa kasha. Shevet echad she'also baraz bezdin agadol Reb Shimon mimaisi olo. According to Reb Shimon, if you have one Shevet that eats Chelet based on the ruling of the Sanhedrin, would Reb Shimon say that Shevet would bring a Palim Davar Shel Tzibur or not? Tashma, come here. Mayin Meviin. Well, we had this brisa from earlier. What says the Tana Kama? What do they bring? Par echad, one Palim Davar Shel Tzibur. Reb Shimon Omer says, Reb Shimon Shnei Parim, two Palim Davar Shel Tziburs. So interestingly, you read the brackets you read the parentheses in this case. But Mayaskina, what are we talking about? If we're talking about we're 7 tribes, had he in the Chelev Shnei Parim, Shmona Parim Bar. Reb Shimon's opinion there would not be 2 Palim Davar Shel Tzibur, it would be 8 Palim Davar Shel Tzibur, 7 for each of the tribes that sin, plus an 8 for Sanhedrin. Elo Dechoto Shevet Echad. Okay, so we must be talking about where one Shevet 8 Chelev, and Reb Shimon is saying that 2 Palim Davar Shel Tzibur are brought, 1 for the Shevet and 1 for Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin brings a Palim Davar Shel Tzibur. But then, Bezdino, if we're talking about where it's the Bezdin of that particular Shevet that ruled, Reb Shimon Leislet. Reb Shimon doesn't hold of that. That's a Reb Yehuda concept. Bringing a Palim Davar Shel Tzibur based on the the ruling of that particular Shevet. So Ella, rather the Bezdin of that particular Shevet, Ella, Horaz, Bezdin Agadol. Okay, so we're talking about a single Shevet that ate Chelet based on the ruling of the Sanhedrin. And Reb Shimon is saying that there's 2 Palim Davar Shel Tzibur, 1 for the Shevet, 1 for the Sanhedrin. V'tisper of effective Gemara, Tanakama, money. well, who is the Tanakama? Reb Meir, if it's Reb Meir, Haruba Bai, can't be Reb Meir, because Reb Meir would require a majority of Am Yisrael to have eaten Chelev. But over here we're talking about one Shevet. Reb Yehuda, and if we're talking about Reb Yehuda, Shar Shvatim Nami Maisu, we just proved that according to Reb Yehuda, by one Shevet that sins, based on the Ora of Sanhedrin, all 12 Shvatim would bring Palam Davar Shel Tzibur. So there would be 12, not just one. So Ela Hane Hamani, Reb Shimon ben Elazar, rather the Tanakam is Reb Shimon ben Elazar, like we said earlier with the Tanya. Okay, and we learned, like we said earlier, and like Reb Shimon ben Elazar teaches. So therefore, it's talking about not one Shevet, but 6 Shvatim that are a majority, or 7 Shvatim that are a minority. But it's not talking about one Shevet. Okay. Okay, so back to our question. What would Reb Shimon say when it comes to one Shevet that ate Chelev based on the Ora of Sanhedrin? Tashma Kamanir v'chachamim omrim. So it says in our Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that when there is a ruling of a bezdin of a particular Shevet, so Rabbi Yehuda says that that particular Shevet will bring a problem to Tzibur. V'chachamim omrim, but the Chachamim disagree, and they argue and they say La'olam enuchai be'ela ala ras bezdin agadol, that there's only a part of Elam Davar Shel Tzibur according to the Chachamim based on the psak of the Sanhedrin. Man Chachamim, who are the Chachamim? Even Reb Meir, if you're going to say it's Reb Meir, Ruvabai, Reb Meir would not say that in this case there would be a problem of Davar Shel Tzibur because it requires a majority. Meaning, Reb Yehuda is saying a single Shevet that ate Chelev based on the psak of their own bezdin. So that Shevet brings a problem Davar Shel Tzibur. The Chacham disagree and say that no. In that case, since it's the bezdin of that particular Shevet, there's no problem Davar Shel Tzibur. It would have to be the Sanhedrin for that particular Shevet to be able to bring a problem Davar, right, to bring a problem Davar Shel Tzibur. But if it was the Sanhedrin, that Shevet would bring a problem Davar Shel Tzibur, even though it was only that Shevet. That Meir would not agree with that. Meir would say it has to be a majority of Am Yisrael. So Elalab, Reb Shimon Ishmamino. So rather, who's the Chachamim? It's Reb Shimon. There you have it. Reb Shimon says, if you have one Shevet that eats Chelev, so long as it is based on the psak of Sanhedrin, there will be Parlan Davar Shel Tzibur. Reb Shimon would say that there would be 2 Parlan Davar Shel Tziburs, one for the Shevet and one brought by the Sanhedrin. Reb Yehuda, Reb Shimon, Shevet Echad, Dikri Kol, Menolu. Now, according to Rabbi Yehuda and Reb Shimon, who both say, in different ways, but who both say that individual Shvatim are bringing Palam Davar Shel Tziburs, how do we know that individual Shvatim can be referred to as a Kahal? Right? Because as we saw earlier, by Palam Davar Shel Tzibur, it says Kahal. Ha-Kahal, to be specific. So, they said, the pasuk says, where's this pasuk? In Divrei Hayomim. Vayamud Yoshafat b'kol Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. Beis Hashem lefnei echotzer echadosha. Then it says that Yoshafat stood b'kahal Yehuda, in the kahal of Judah, of the single tribe of Judah, and it's being referred to as a kahal. My chadosha, what does it mean? This new gate. So says the Gemara, that they made a chiddush. They said Tvul Yom Ayikonis b'machne Levi. They said a Tvul Yom can't go into the Machne Levi and Har Bayis. But what do we see in that pasuk? We see that it's referring to Kahal Yehuda, that the single Shevet of Yehuda is being referred to as a Kahal. Maskef Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Rav Acha bar Yaakov asks, Mimai Dumashani Yerushalayim Da'avanam Binyamin. Well, maybe in Yerushalayim it's not just Yehuda in Yerushalayim. There's also Binyamin in Yerushalayim. So it's not a proof that one Shevet alone could be referred to Kahal, because after all, in Yerushalayim, it says Kahal Yehuda of Yerushalayim. But in Yerushalayim, it's not just Yehuda. Binyamin's also there. Maybe that's why it's referred to a Kahal, but a single Shevet wouldn't be a Kahal, maybe. So Elo, Amavacha by Yaakov, the Chsiv, because the Pasuk says by Yaakov Avinu, Vayomer Eli, the Rabbanu Shalom said to me, Hineni Mafrecha, I'm going to make you fruitful, V'bisicha, and multiply you, V'nasaticha l'kahal, Amen. And I'm going to make you a Kahal of nations. V'gomer man isililei ayishaita binyamin. And when the Rabbanu Shalom promises Yankiv that I will in the future make you into Kahal, well, at that point, there was only one Shevet that was yet to be born, Binyamin. So we see that this Shevet that was going to be born in the future was referred to as a Kahal, that Binyamin alone, the single Shevet Binyamin, was referred to as a Kahal. Shmamina, Hachikamar, Rachmana, Mislidlach Hashta, Kahal Achvina. That the Rebbeinu Shalom is saying to Yaakov Avinu that now a Kahal, another Kahal, is going to be born to you, that the Shevet of Binyamin alone is referred to as a Kahal. So we see that a Shevet is referred to as a Kahal. Amar lei Rav Shva, the Rav Kana, but Rav Shva says to Rav Kana, Dilma, Hachi Karmel Rachmana. Maybe what the Rebbeinu Shalom is saying to Yaakov Avinu is, Lichimisi lilach Binyamin, that once Binyamin will be born, Hu dahavu yud bei shvatim the miskari is called. Maybe what the Rebbeinu Shalom is saying to Yaakov Avinu is that Binyamin is going to be born to you, and when that happens, when Binyamin is joined together with the rest of the 11 Shvatim, and now there's 12 Shvatim, maybe the 12 Shvatim tzazamen together will be the call, not that Binyamin alone is the call. Amalei, Rav Kana responds to Rav Shva, Elishneimosar Shvatim ikol, Acharosar Shvatim lo ikol. What you're telling me, that 12 Shvatim are call, but 11 aren't a call? But we had suggested earlier that Yehuda and Binyamin, right? We had said, when the pasuk says Kal Yehuda of Yerushalayim, we said, maybe when it says Kal Yehuda, it's not that Yehuda alone is a Kal, but since there was also Binyamin there, that's why it's called a Kal. So at the very least, Yehuda and Binyamin together, 2 Shvatim is referred to as a Kal. And you're suggesting that 11 Shvatim would not be a Kal? So we're saying, no way, no how. Rather, what the Rebbeinu Shalom is saying is that Binyamin will be born, and Binyamin will be referred to as a Kal. So we see that a single tribe could be referred to as a Kahal. And Cheve, that was Daf Hey, Daf 5 of Masechta Horayos. Masechta Horayos has been very demanding. Been pretty good, but there's a lot of koiches, a lot of effort. Cheve, today there were no flies flying around while I was recording, which is amazing. So today's Daf talks about who actually offers the Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor and when. So we saw a million different scenarios. I would say that the main shitas were that Reb Meir says that it's the Sanhedrin that offers the Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor when a majority of Israel follows their ruling. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion was that each tribe, and not only is it that the tribes that sinned bring the Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor, but even the tribes that didn't sin bring the Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor. And this is regardless of if all 12 tribes sin, 7 tribes sin, 1 tribe sins, everybody ends up bringing a Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor. Rabbi Yehuda also said that also if it's not just based on the psak of the Sanhedrin, but even just based on the psak of the bezin of a particular tribe, but in that case only that tribe will bring a Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor, not the others. So the opinion of Reb Shimon, who says that when it's a majority, so for example, if 7 tribes, 8 chelev, so then each sinning tribe, each of the 7 sinning tribes would bring a Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor, plus Sanhedrin would also bring one. But if it's not the majority, even if it's 7 tribes but they're the minority, or 6 tribes but they're the majority, then there would only be 1 Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor for Am Yisrael and 1 for the Sanhedrin. Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Shimon ben Elazar says this interesting shita of even when there's 6 tribes and they're the majority, or 7 tribes but they're the minority, Sanhedrin would be the ones to bring the Parah L'Davar Shel Tzibor. I would say that those were kind of the big main shitas that were discussed, and then we saw all sorts of permutations and questions and scenarios. So it's a very gewaltige Daf. Daf Hey of Masechta Horayos. Peace out.